Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a short little video, not really a review because I've already reviewed this knife. This is the Miguron Vakor, or Vakor, however you want to say it, in titanium. I reviewed the G10 version in 14C28N. This is a $43 knife. This is a $99 knife. They're both very good. I'm going to link them down in the description. You can check them out if you want to. Just help my channel and use those links, but that's up to you. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, and make sure your notifications are turned on for the Metal Complex YouTube channel. These are good products for people who, and believe me, as somebody who absolutely will go out of their way to buy American products when I feel like the quality is there and the value makes sense for what it is that they're selling. They're going to be more expensive, and I accept that because they cost more to make, but I completely and totally understand people just not wanting to spend that much money, just wanting to get a simple tool that's built really well for way less money. And companies like Miguron make that extremely possible. In fact, I think Miguron has some of the best in-class prices across the board for Chinese production knives. A lot of people are telling me this is the best value knife of 2025. Titanium and M390 for $99. It certainly is impressive, I think, on paper for the materials used and the general quality we expect from Miguron. I would say I can completely understand why people arrived at that conclusion. And I think anybody who buys this knife is going to have a really, really good experience with it. But it could be better. In fact, it should be better in one area specifically. The overall execution of the titanium version of this knife is very, very good. This is a PVD handle and a satin blade. They make a version of this knife that is a PVD coated blade. I would avoid that one, and I'll explain why here in a moment. But this is definitely like, Miguron's Benchmade bug out. It's not copied line for line, and I always think, anybody who says copy of the bug out, it makes me laugh a little bit because that implies that the lines of the bug out are somehow original. Benchmade does not own the most classic handle shape and blade profile on earth. Those existed far before Benchmade put them together and did the gray man marketing thing. But the bug out is a popular model. Lightweight, compact, and traditional, sort of safe, aesthetically safe lines, very ergonomic. It's a good tool. It's just, freaking expensive for the base model. So lots and lots of companies have followed suit and made their own versions of the bug out. And I would say pretty much every version of the bug out out there is better than the original bug out, both in terms of design and, of course, price. Miguron's might be the best. I like the lines. I like the choke up spot. It's got wonderful cutting geometry. Operation is super duper smooth. Even this titanium version, which is quite a bit heavier than the G10 version, but even this titanium version is pretty light. It comes in at 3 ounces. That's still, in my book, ultra lightweight. The standard version in G10 and 14C28N is super duper. It's not even an ounce less. It's 2 ounces, right? So great. Honestly, at this moment, I think the 14C28N one is better all the way around. Now, M390 is largely considered to be a more premium steel. It is a more premium steel. It's a more expensive steel to create versus 14C28N. M390 boasts much higher edge retention, potentially, and I believe more corrosion resistance. Not as tough, though. On a knife that you're going to use every single day, toughness can be really important, especially on an inexpensive knife that you're going to kind of throw around. The reason that 14C28N is largely considered the best budget steel is not because it has incredible edge retention. No, it's because it has incredible toughness, and that supports the edge and makes it easier to touch up. It's not going to chip. It's not nearly as likely to chip, right? So some people are going to value toughness over hardness or edge retention or whatever, right? I mean, it's all preference. 14C28N has quite the range for optimal hardness. Now, I don't really expect companies making knives at these super low price points at $43. I don't expect them to hit massively hard HRC, like in the optimal range for a composition. I don't expect them to be hitting the absolute pinnacle. That's pretty expensive to do, and I think that would be pretty useless to the vast majority of the people who are actually picking this stuff up. The HRC range that on the 14C28 on these knives is 58 to 60. Ho-hum, right? Within the range, I think it could be a little bit harder, right? But still pretty good. And since 14C28N is really, it's the balance of attributes with an emphasis on toughness, essentially the geometry of this knife is going to allow it to continue to be a good cutting performer with this steel and still have that high benefit, that high balance of toughness that people look for in 14C28N. This is very close to a perfect product that's in the scope of like the budget bug out, right? This is about as close as you get to that. A super seal version of this knife would be awesome. And we have one right here. The problem is they apply that exact same range to the M390, 58 to 60. This is not debatable. That is a bad range for M390. The geometry of this knife will allow it to cut. And the vast majority of people who buy this knife will probably not notice at all because it's so freaking thin behind the edge. They're just going to use it and it's just going to keep cutting because it's thin. But it's like, why are we using this steel if we're not going to come anywhere close to heat treating it properly? Industry standard for M390, not that I agree with it, but the industry standard for M390 tends to be 59 to 61. 59, in my opinion, is too soft for M390. 58 is a joke, right? It's not an exponential increase, but there's more and more and more increase of change and the hardness for each point on the Rockwell scale. So it sounds like it's just a 2-point difference and metal complex is being dramatic. No, there's a huge difference, right? I mean, M390, we can't just like automatically, M390, it's all the same. It's high performance steel. It is, if the geometry is really good. I mean, obviously there's a bunch of different ways to define high performance. Let's say we're talking about cutting efficiency and edge retention, right? Okay, so you need thin geometry, obviously assuming we're cutting something that's far softer than the blade. And then you need optimal hardness. In that case, you really can demonstrate close to or the absolute peak of M390's capability. When balanced, I think the idea there is to balance corrosion resistance with it, right? So 58 and 59 HRC M390, even at ultra thin geometry, is going to come nowhere near its maximum potential. I have always argued that the industry standard should be 60 to 62. And this is very accommodating for a wide range of geometries that we're going to see in knives that are both meant to be super duper utilitarian and knives that are meant more for collectors and enthusiasts. Might have geometry that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Okay. Now, M390 can get a lot harder. A lot of people point out that anything under 62 is too soft. M390 should be 62 to 64. Gets a little crazy there, right? Maybe some people could make use of that. The problem is the average person is going to use a knife in a way that is not going to be friendly to M390 at 62 to really 63, 64 HRC. That's super hard. M390 is not a tough steel. If you didn't know that, it's not a tough steel. It's actually pretty brittle. A chipped 63, 64 M390 blade that's super thin will be super not fun to resharpen. And I'm saying that in a way that doesn't really paint the picture. It's going to be an absolute ass experience. It's going to be awful. You will hate it, assuming you have the proper equipment to properly sharpen it, right? So might be like, super great for like a really small percentage of people who really like have like incredibly honed sharpening skills and really understand geometry and are going to use the knife in a way that edge retention and edge performance is incredibly important, right? They can apply that. Very few people. So 60 to 62, I think would be really great. If this knife at $99 was achieving 60 to 62 HRC in M390, absolutely, it would be considered far and away the greatest value pocket knife in existence. In my opinion, dollar for dollar would be the greatest one. Why it's 58 to 60, I have no idea. I also think this about their D2 models. Their D2 models should also be 60 to 62. The nice thing about those is that those knives are about $28. They've got D2 and aluminum knives for $28. And I think oftentimes they hit an HRC range of either 58 to 60 or 59 to 61, which is, I mean, hey, it's a freaking $28 knife. Most $28 knives, you're lucky if it's made out of anything that's harder than a gum wrapper, right? But Miguron is in position. They are already like one of the kings of these territories, right? You're sub 100, sub 50, or even sub 30. My goodness, they do an excellent job. Do I think that it might slightly increase their prices if they bumped up in HRC and make it consistent? Yes, I do. Do I think it would be worth it? Oh my God, yes. The amount of room that you guys have, Miguron, the amount of competitive room that you have to do this is vast. It is huge. Let's get these up there. Let's go ahead and take the crown. If this knife gets bumped to 120, but it's M390 from 60 to 62, you're still the king. You're still the king of that territory. That's amazing, right? Now, people are going to throw stuff out there like, oh, Kershaw and the Bel Air is only a few, $40 more, and but it's not titanium, right? And titanium might not matter to you, but it is going to matter to some people. That's a really big deal to some people, right? Same with your 14C28N. Get it up there. Get it up there a little bit higher. 14C28N can get harder and still maintain absolutely incredible toughness. Bump these numbers up and be the king of this territory, because you're not only appeasing people who are just wanting to buy a cheap knife and they don't really know any better, they don't really care, but you're also appeasing people in the knife enthusiast world, content creators, and people who are going to be very loud about it, right? And people will absolutely be loud about this, and it also kind of sets a standard for the rest of the industry. Look at Miguron. They're doing it. Why can't you do it? That's going to be really, really noisy, definitely, right? Might just start off with a few of us who are in this space, but that is the more people point to that and say, hey, listen, like these guys can do it and they're doing it at this price. Why can't you do it? We need that to happen, right? I think that bumping your HRC, even if it does increase the price slightly, is going to really highlight Miguron as a standout company. And they're going to be the go-to company for so many different people, not just newer people or people who are, on a super budget, but people who have, have tons and tons of choices and are well educated on all of this stuff and are not limited by a super tight budget. Those people will still turn to Miguron as well and talk about them and say, hey, look at this. So that's really it. Miguron doesn't really have any other areas that they need to improve on. It's just their HRC ranges. You just need to get them a little bit higher, and don't do the minimum. Get it up there. Your 60 to 62 should be, in my opinion, bare minimum for M390. I think 14C28N is still fine at 5860. It would be better at 5961, but it'd be really impressive at 60 to 62. There are plenty of companies out there who are bumping their numbers up, and they receive plenty of high praise from consumers and, just people in general and content creators, influencers, all of that stuff. It's important. People talk about it. I think people nowadays are far more educated on this stuff. So I don't think there's any reason to have your M390 from 58 to 60. But if you pick this knife up, it is good. And the geometry is so thin that for casual use, you're probably not going to notice it. But the average person who buys a high performance car is not actually going to push that thing to the limit. We still want our advertised performance, even if it's just going to be in our mind. We park the car in the garage or just drive it to get groceries. Doesn't matter. If it can't actually perform the way that it should, then why? That's the reason that people buy stuff like that, right? It's not because they're going to go out and not everybody, some of them do. They're not going to go out there and race it and push it to the limit every single day. But I would have to, if I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on an extremely high performance car, yeah, I'm probably going to baby it and put it in the garage, right? Might go get groceries here and there, but I would definitely be upset to find out that it's nowhere near as capable as it was advertised, because you're paying to be a part of that experience, right? So it's just, in my opinion, a lot of people might think that's a bad example. In my opinion, this is the same with knives. What the consumer decides to do with it afterwards is, it's up to them, right? Comparing a budget knife or a low-cost knife to a high-performance car, right, at base, I can understand why you would say that's a bad example. But there's no reason to use M390 at all if you're going to have it that soft. I mean, at that point, it basically turns into, I don't know, 154 cm or worse, right? It's no longer, it's just letters and numbers. It doesn't mean it. To a lot of people, M390 represents performance, but at that low HRC, it is anything but performance. It's, maybe it probably would be, I don't even know if it'd be worse than VG10 or 154. I'm not really sure. So whether or not the end user plans to absolutely push it to the limit is besides the point. You absolutely should be pushing it to the best optimal HRC that's possible competitively, right? Which again is, in my opinion, 60 to 62. These are great products. They can be better. Miguron is a great company. They're a good company. They could be a great company. They're a great company. They could be a godlike company in the space. So yeah, do that. That's going to be it today. Links in the description for these guys. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.